Hello, and welcome to Books and Beyond. I'm your host, Jimmy Bennett, and today I am honored to have Lee Howard, the Community News Director for the Day Publishing Company, as my guest. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about the impact the community newspapers have on us and what you can do to be a part of it. So, Lee, welcome very much.
Thank you for having me.
So, tell me a little about yourself first, a little bit about your career.
Okay. Well, I'm a graduate of Washington Lee University in Virginia, and my first job was down there as a editor, actually, strangely enough, right out of college. And then I was up here on vacation in southeastern Connecticut. My grandmother had a cottage in Old Lyme, and I saw there was an opening at the Day, and that was in 1979, 40 years ago, and I've been here ever since. A lot of different titles along the way. I was a reporter for a couple of years. Then I was a copy editor, page one editor, Sunday editor, and then I ran a Sunday magazine called Marketplace. Did that for 2 years, and then they asked me to open up the Times Community News Group about 16 years ago. Initially, there were two papers in Waterford and Lyme, and they asked me to add 3 papers the first year, and I added a whole bunch of new employees that I hired in 3 weeks. And then I opened up 3 other papers. Actually, I'm sorry, 4 other papers, including one in Westerly, Rhode Island, and that no longer exists, but the other papers are all still in existence and still doing well. I did that for about 3.5 years. We won a whole bunch of awards, including 4 national awards. And then they sort of decided they were going to turn the community news group into basically a website, and they brought in someone else, and I said, okay, that's fine, I'll do something else. So I was a business reporter for 10 years, won some major awards, including the biggest award you can get in Connecticut journalism for investigative reporting. So then I did that for 10 years, and we had some retirements about 2.5 years ago, and I said, well, I'm getting a little older, and reporting's a bit of a strain. I still enjoyed it, but, I wouldn't mind something a little calmer. So I said, I'd be happy to do the community news beat again. When I was running the papers with all 9 papers that I had for a while, I had 21 people under me. When I joined the community news group, there was 4 people. Immediately after I got hired, there were 3 people. And now there's 2 people running 8 newspapers,
Wow.
Which is kind of a crazy thing.
Yeah,
But
must keep you hopping.
Oh yeah, very busy.
So I know the community paper as the Mystic Times.
Right.
It shows up in my mailbox once a week.
Yep.
I personally enjoy it myself because it's community news.
Right.
And one of the things I like about it is it's very upbeat. It's
Sure.
It's not impeachment, school shootings, all the other things that depress you when you watch, the usual news.
Right.
And it also, I find that things are happening that I wouldn't have known about if I hadn't read about this. You know what I mean? So tell me, how do you format? How do you choose and pick, and what do you like to see?
So when I first came on, we were heavily reliant on Day newspaper articles, kind of recycling those articles, which we still do to some extent. But my real goal was to try to get as much community involvement in the newspapers as possible. So I immediately reached out to some local groups, looked for new columnists. We ended up with a few, including from your group, Kappa. We grabbed Jill Whitney, who does a personal connections column for us. And we had another columnist for a while that did an out and about column. So we started reaching out to local groups, historical societies, community groups, libraries, and said, look, whatever you were used to doing, we want more of that. We want more information. So a lot of times our cover stories are stories that were in the Day, but they're very focused on the community that we're in. And as you said, they tend to be upbeat. I kind of said early on, I want the Times to be sort of a politics-free zone. And I do listen to people. We had a food columnist who made some political remark, kind of a funny remark, or she thought it was funny. But I actually got a call from someone who said she didn't appreciate it, and she read her, she liked her Times papers to, sort of be out of politics. And, as soon as I got that call, I said, yeah, you're right. We really, so if I see, I've already, kind of mentioned to a lot of my columnists, let's not go there. But if they do go there, I tend to try to just not put that in, because it's not really what people are looking for in a local paper. They want to know what people are doing. So we added a friends and neighbors section, and we encourage people to send in little snippets. If you've retired after 40 years at EB, or if your kid just won black belt in karate, whatever it is, some nice accomplishments, send us a little story, send us a photo. And it's funny, some of these things I see on Facebook, and Facebook has sort of become the new newspaper for people, and a lot of people, especially from the younger generation, don't really think of newspapers as their first source of news. They think of Facebook as their first source of news. So I find myself a lot of times, I'm friends with everybody. Everybody who asks me to be a Facebook friend, I Facebook friend. And so I get all these stories, and I spend half my day probably going through Facebook saying, hey, send me that photo, send me that story, and people are often really appreciative, because the great thing about newspapers is it's something that stays on a shelf for a while. It's something you can clip out, it's not this ephemeral thing that Facebook tends to be, where it flashes for 5 minutes and then it's gone.
Yeah, one of my little taglines I always say is, people should read something that's not going to disappear with the next post. You know what I mean? Because I have seen things on Facebook, but we'll go back to see it again, and it's gone. And that's what I find about papers. In fact, I always laugh, because at a job I had once, I'd go into the break room at lunchtime, and there'd be 30 millennials, on their phone, and I would pick up the paper, the one lone paper there, and read the paper. And they'd all look at me like, but. You don't get the depth of the story and the thing, and the real feel for it. And I think that we live in a beautiful community. I think there's a lot of great people. I think there's a lot of great things happening all the time. Right. But you don't even know about it. I can't tell you how many times I've said to somebody, I was at the Noang Baptist Church church bazaar. They're like, oh, when was that? Well, that's what I appreciate about your paper. I mean, if people put it in, which I encourage everybody who has an organization or has an event coming up or something to contact you, so you can get it in there.
Please do. And my email address may be posted at some point on this broadcast, but also we have times@theday.com, which is sort of our generic address that goes to both me and my assistant editor, Amanda Hutchinson. So that's where kind of briefs go, if you want to get a brief in, or if you have like photographs you want to try to get in, that's a good spot to send them. And neighbors@theday.com is where we do all the calendar items.
Oh, okay.
And I got to tell you, when you see your calendar in the Mystic Times, it's only about probably a quarter of what we have. So we do target the calendar to each individual community. We always get the Mystic stuff in no matter what. If you're in Mystic, we're probably going to get the Stonington and the Groton stuff in. And then, a little bit of New London if it's like really of interest to a lot of different people. So that's kind of how we roll. And the same thing with briefs and other items. One of the early things we added was a kindness in real life column, which is where we encouraged people that have been volunteering in their community for a long time and they're getting awards. Tell us about that. If you got some fundraiser for somebody that's having trouble with cancer or whatever, that's a great place for it. We have a Be an Angel column, which is specifically intended for people kind of reaching out to the community for help. So recently, there was a woman by the name of Jamie Allen who we featured, and I think she grew up in New London. I'm not sure if she still lives there, but they had a fundraiser on this past Saturday at the Bird's Eye Cafe in New London, which I had never been to, but it was the coolest thing, because we ended up putting her story on the front of the New London Times and in a lot of other Times papers. And we went in there, the place was absolutely packed. There was probably 150 people in this place that probably shouldn't only have about 75, And they were having like a steak grill, and I don't know how much money they raised, but it looked like they did really well. So, I mean, that's the type of thing we're trying to encourage. I saw early on, all the rigmarole with politics and everything, and I wanted to sort of emphasize that there really are a lot of great people in our community and elsewhere that want to do good things. And it doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, believe in impeachment, don't believe in impeachment, whatever it is, you're still,
Right.
human beings and trying to, do the best for each other.
Well, we're community first, and I
Right.
think that's what I think your paper really does highlight and show. And we talked about this earlier. I had done a story. I did a story. I think it was last year or something about. It was sort of a whimsical little story, but about getting out of Mystic in the crazy summertime, and
Right.
other places that you can go. I did Gillette's Castle this time, and I hope to do more for you
Good.
along that lane.
Great.
There's a lot of historical places around here that people
Right.
drive by every day and don't even know
I know.
really what they're all about and what's
Yeah.
inside them. And there's a lot of organizations
Yeah.
that they might want to belong to.
That was one of my early pushes because I recognized very early on that local history is a big deal around here. And actually, the Day just did a survey which they kind of released to the employees a couple weeks ago, which showed that history is like the number 3 subject of all things that people are interested in reading in the Day newspaper.
Oh, wow.
So I've been doing a history podcast now for a little over 2 years. It's called Recorded History. And if you go onto theday.com and look for podcasts, you'll find some recorded history. I've done over 20. My last one was on Shiloh Baptist Church. I interviewed Bishop Benjamin Watts.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Shiloh Baptist is a African American church that's been around for now 125 years. Really cool story. A couple months before that, I interviewed a couple people with Mystic ties for the Woodstock 50th anniversary. Both of these guys, Dan Curlin,
Down from Mystic Disc.
from
yeah.
Mystic Disc, and Evan Nichols, who used to
Okay.
run the Mystic Emporium.
Yeah.
They were both there at the
Wow.
at Woodstock 50 years ago. That was a great interview, and I've been trying to get local voices, local historians, that people haven't heard about. So history was big. I started reaching out to the historical societies. Jim Streeter's been writing a history column
Right.
for us for a while. I've been reaching out. I had a little success to getting an East Lyme person writing about history, but that kind of dwindled. These things happen and then they stop happening, so I have to keep going in and encouraging it. But, I'll read like the Mystic Historical Society, and if they have an interesting article in their newsletter, I'll say, hey, can I use this type of thing? Because, I think everyone really should use the Times papers as their newsletter, essentially.
Right.
Why are people spending, a bunch of money sending these, mailing these things out to people when they're only, maybe have a mailing list of 150, when our mailing list is literally 80,000 people.
Wow, is
By
that
the
right?
way, yeah, we have 8 publications with almost 80,000 circulation. Our newspaper goes for free into everybody's mailbox. If they have any sort of physical address, we don't put it in post office boxes. But if you have a physical address, it goes. So if you're a Day subscriber, it'll go inside the Day that you get on usually Wednesdays or Thursdays. If you're not a Day subscriber, you still get the Times.
Right.
So that's a
Right.
pretty cool thing. So, and a lot of people realize, hey, if you want to hit everybody in the community, this is the place to go.
You know what? I want to make one little point too. When you get those little cards in the mail saying, "Do you want to get the Times?" and stuff, a lot of people ignore them. They toss them aside or whatever. But you should fill those out and send them in because it helps.
Very important, yeah. If we have, I can't remember what the exact percentage is, but I think it's something around 50%. If 50% of the people send those cards back to us, then our mailing rate goes down a little bit, makes it easier for us to send it. I mean, these things are free.
Right, yeah,
How
you're
much
getting
in life
free
is
paper,
free?
right. Right.
And so the least you can do, I think, is mail the card back and say, hey, I want to keep getting these things. We also started a new initiative recently that if you like us well enough, there is a voluntary pay program that we initiated. And I know every once in a while we'll run an ad for that, or we'll put an insert in, or I think you can find it on the Day website as well. They did that over, we actually have 7 other papers that are run by another group in Madison, Connecticut. And they make quite a bit of money off the voluntary pay program. People love those papers, and it's kind of like the only game in town. I mean, the thing is about the Day is a really great paper, so a lot of people love to get the Day.
Right.
So the Times, sometimes becomes a little bit of an afterthought, whereas on the other side of the river, there really is no great paper in that area.
Yeah.
So they really kind of count on that as like pretty much their sole source of news.
Well, I think you made a great point earlier too about being in print. I mean, it's one thing to tell grandma, oh, I was tagged in a post. But it's a whole other thing if you can send, a printed article.
Yeah.
Something they can keep
Sure.
whole frame even if they're,
Right.
if
Well,
they're that proud.
Yeah, you become part
know?
of history because all
Right.
those papers are archived in some way. Most of our stories go onto the Day website. Those stories get archived. If there's a photo, there'll be a photo attached. So if you Google your name, 50 years from now, about when you got your award for getting a karate prize or whatever when you were 7 years old, it'll
Right.
come up.
Yeah.
You'll be able to see it.
Yeah, it'll be there.
You
Yeah.
know, so not only is it a paper edition, but it's also a sort of in perpetuity,
Right.
record of what you've done in your life.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't
Yeah.
really think about that,
Yeah.
that way.
Sure.
So, you want people? What kind of articles are you looking for people? I mean, what are your different columns or genres? Or not, you know what I mean?
Right.
you
right.
know.
Well, we have. I've already mentioned some of them. There's the kindness in real life, which is giving people props for doing good things. Be an angel, which is you need help with something. Tell us, and we'll try to reach out to the community. Friends and neighbors. We have a Let's Go column that we do, which is kind of like a, here's a great thing to do this weekend. Some major event that'd be a cool thing to do. We have just a wide variety, pretty much anything you can think about if it's happening in the community. The Out and About column that you wrote, we do have a regular columnist that does that, but if someone randomly, wants to send us a column on, some great brew pub that just opened and, here's my
Right.
experience with it, that would be great. We'd love to hear from people we have an In the Galleries thing that we recently instituted for art galleries and that sort of thing.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. There's we had talked about maybe perhaps doing a Kappa column or something at some point.
Sure.
I think that it's really it's a nice free advertising way to get your word out about your organization or what you do.
Sure.
There's many things that I didn't know about until I joined Kappa. A man, Larry Zaccaro, at my show, I didn't realize that Mystic had a big Toastmasters
Oh yeah.
organization.
Sure. I think Niantic does too. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just one of those things I
Right.
just didn't know about it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I do want to know about. And,
Right. Yeah, and that's the type of thing, if you were out and about and you went to one of those meetings and you thought, hey, more people should know about this,
Right.
write us about it.
Right.
We'd be happy to put that kind of information in. We recently started a new feature called Your Turn, which is kind of like if there's some essay you want to write that doesn't seem to have a place necessarily to go, we could be a place for that. We've written a couple of things there. There's also a column that we do regularly called In the Schools, which is stuff that's going on in the schools. We've been really reaching out to the schools. We've had some really good luck with the Waterford school system, where there's actually a woman who runs a journalism class at Waterford High School, and she's had probably a dozen kids write stories and take pictures for her.
Oh, that's great.
I started a young journalists initiative recently over the summer. We had, again, about a dozen high school journalists come in, and we're still kind of working on that. We got a few people that are regularly writing out of that. But it's a little hard unless the classroom kind of coordinates with us. It's a little hard. The kids maybe aren't going to do it on their own. They got
Right.
other priorities and stuff. But if you make it part of a classroom experience,
Right.
and I'm always happy to come in and talk to classes, to come in and edit. I go in about once a month to the Waterford High School class, and I'll critique the layout, because I do layout as well as writing, and photography even. I've done quite a bit of photography for the day. I've done video, I do the podcast, so I have a wide range of experience, but it's great. I love working with the young journalists. Right now, I have 2 interns from Mitchell College who are working for me through the Times. I've got another one that's going to be starting next semester. So if you're a local college, local high school, you want to bring the kids in and get some real life experience, happy to do it.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So let me ask you now: if the average person writes a story and sends it into you, but maybe it's a little shaky on the writing or the wording or stuff like that, do you actually do editing, or
Oh, yeah.
do you? Okay, you do. All right, good.
Yeah, I do quite a bit of editing. Most people probably put in more than they should. I mean,
Right.
the thing is, we're a tab paper, so it's kind of small. So
Right.
we try to keep most of our articles down to in the 300 to 450 word range.
Okay.
So if it gets much longer than that, and there's journalism style you have to stick to. Most people don't know journalism style, which they shouldn't have to. So we'll put it in the proper style. We'll edit for content. We'll edit for brevity. We'll just make it more compact. That's what journalists do. They take huge bits of information and they kind of bring it down.
Put the relevant parts in, and
Right.
Well,
But
that's good, because even me, on my 3rd book, my editing is just my grammar and my, it's atrocious.
I get a lot of requests from people to help edit their stuff, and if I have time, I will.
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine is doing a historical piece on a beach that I'm pretty familiar with, and so she wants me to get in there and edit it, and I told her, as soon as you're ready, let me know. I'm happy to do that.
I'm glad you're doing more of the history of the area and stuff. I'm always fascinated by it myself. My father-in-law, before he passed away, he told me stories, of Mystic back, in the 30s and 40s and 20s.
Sure.
That just, you just can't even imagine it.
Yeah.
When there was no trees between the Mystic River and Groton. You know what I
Sure.
mean? It was all fields and a few photographs and stuff like that. But I think it's important for people to realize, where you come from.
Absolutely.
And how the area has developed into what it
changed,
is.
yeah.
It's changed so much since you were young. It's changed so much since I was young.
Sure. Yeah.
That's the one constant has changed, right?
Every time I try to remember the restaurant that used to be on that corner,
Right.
I'm like, there was probably
Right.
6 restaurants,
Yeah.
in between.
Yeah, I was joking around with somebody. I said we should have started a restaurant museum around here, and everybody pull out those little memorabilia from all over the place, from all these defunct restaurants that were.
And it's funny, if you want to know the number 1 story the day found in its survey, I believe it was either number 1 or number 2. It was restaurants, food and restaurants. So that's a push. We're getting into the newsletter business in the day a little bit more. So we're going to be adding some new newsletters, and one of them is local history.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. So,
Good.
and I think we're going to be doing I think we already do a food newsletter, but I think
Yeah.
that's going to become expansive too. I also go into the local libraries and talk to people. Sort of outreach with the community to tell them how they can contribute. So I do have a packet that I developed that I just spoke with a bunch of people last Thursday at the New London Public Library who wanted to know, how do I get my stuff in the paper? What's the nuts and bolts of writing a press release? How do I attach a photograph to an email? So this packet is all here, and if you write to me at l.howard@theday.com, I'm happy to send you a copy of this. And also, I will be planning more meetings in the future. So keep in mind, I have the In the Times column that I write occasionally if there's something going on that I think I need to communicate to the readers. And I think that's really cool because not too many editors communicate to the readers anymore,
Well, I'll be honest with you, and I told you this earlier, that is part of the reason why I contacted, why I contacted you.
Right.
I saw your article and I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I could, so that was just another, benefit of the paper.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely. And one of the features I completely forgot to mention was My Pet Pal.
Right, yeah,
which
I saw
was
that.
there before I got there. My Pet Pal is probably our most popular feature. People write in about what their pets mean to them.
You know what? The only thing I'd like to see about that
Yeah.
is instead of the dogs and cats, where's the snakes? Where's the iguanas?
If
where's
people
the fish?
sent them,
I hope they do.
If
I
people
hope they,
send us, we will put them in.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think there's a lot of.
We've had guinea pigs.
Yeah,
I don't know if we've ever had a snake, but I think we've had.
Well, my son is he's a big reptile guy,
Okay,
so
all right.
he's got enough snakes.
Okay, all right, more than enough.
Yeah, more than enough. But some are interesting. Like he's got a albino blue-eyed rat snakes. You know what I mean? Which I thought.
Wow.
I always said to him, I said, you should, my pet pal, you should send that in.
Sure.
Maybe I'll do it for him.
We would publish. Well, I'll tell you a funny story about that because recently we got to the point where we had no pet pals left. So I actually wrote up a thing about my pet. And because we put a little notice in the paper that day, we really need pet pals, we got a ton. So my little doggy has not yet made the paper because we give priority to the readers.
Now, one other thing I wanted to get to, because we're running out of time, but
Yeah.
was you also were doing something with the Eastern Symphony?
Yeah. I'm very, not only I'm in the paper, but I'm very involved in the community. So I sing with the Eastern Connecticut Symphony Chorus.
Oh, you do? You sing?
I sing, yeah. I'm a bass. I've been, actually, I started singing with the chorus when I was 26 years old, which was more than 30 years ago. And I did that for 2 or 3 years. And then about 30 years went by, and I got busy with other things. I had kids, and about 3.5 years ago, I got back with the symphony chorus. I had to audition this time. I didn't have to audition before. And the woman just before me who auditioned was a Russian soprano who sounded like unbelievable. And I'm going like, I'm never going to get picked after that. But they're desperate for men, so so I got picked. So
good.
So very involved in that. Very involved in the tennis scene. I was actually president of the Eastern Connecticut Tennis Association and started that group, which lasted about 10 years.
I heard that you were a formidable tennis player.
I was quite good in my day, and still play a pretty mean game. Just won a match last Saturday. Actually.
Oh, nice!
Yeah.
Well, congratulations!
Playing #1 doubles. So
yeah,
that was pretty cool. Yeah, and I run a tennis team on Sunday. Very involved in that. I ran a tennis tournament fundraiser for the Eastern Connecticut Symphony this past summer that raised about $1,500 for the symphony.
Do you sleep?
Do I sleep? Not as much as I should, but yeah, I take care of things. I'm actually writing a musical right now that I'm hoping someday to be able to show off. Working with a friend of mine who went to the Berklee School of Music, and
that's great.
I write these crazy songs, and I've got this crazy story, and he's got all the musical talent. So between the two of us, it may
you gotta
happen.
love it.
Yeah, so. Yeah, I was one of the first actors in Hands, which was a local play that was put on. It was pretty well known back in the 80s. I was president of a group called Performers Co-op, which for about 10 years put on original plays and musicals around the area.
My God.
Used to play the jazz trombone years ago, so I've been really busy with a lot of different areas.
Yeah,
so, fun times. Yeah, I try to keep my hand in a lot of different things.
Cooking and booking keeps me.
I got the tennis to keep me in shape.
Yeah.
I got journalism to keep my mind sharp, and music for the soul. So it's a good combination.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I wish we had another half hour, and maybe perhaps you can come back.
Anytime.
We are running out of time for today. Lee, I want to say, will also be our guest tonight at the Southeastern Connecticut chapter of the Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association. We meet at the Groton Regency at 6:30 every third Monday of the month. So if you're interested in anything to do with the written word or the arts, please come by, check us out, and maybe you'll find a calling. I want to thank you once again, Lee. It was very interesting, and I want to encourage everybody to read the Times. Read your local Times paper. I want you to really think about contributing and sending stuff in. It's for us. It's for prosperity. It's for keeping our community strong and happy. And thank you very much.
Good. Glad to be here. Thanks so
right,
much.
thank you.
All right. Take care of yourself.